Meet Masamune-kun, a guy who turned his life into a revenge fitness montage. After getting brutally rejected by his childhood crush for being a chubby kid, he spends years transforming himself into a six-pack prince. Now, he's back with a master plan to make her fall in love with him, just so he can dump her like yesterday's leftovers. The anime opens with Masamune starting off his morning by admiring his well-toned body in front of the mirror, clearly proud of his physique. And all he needs right now is a gym buddy. His sister Chinatsu teases him for being the peak of vanity, but brother was smoking hot, and nothing was bringing down his flames. But the moment is interrupted when their mom, Kinu, announces that breakfast is ready. However, Masamune's mood sours when he sees the sweet and greasy dishes on the table, refusing to eat such high-calorie food that would make him go from Superman to the Big Bell Bandit. Santa Claus, he heads straight to school, as maintaining his appearance is his top priority. At school, Masamune notices some girls playing tennis and casually compliments them, making them blush. His charming demeanor as the new boy earns him some admiration. It was like Henry Cavill was walking through the halls of the school. The peaceful moment doesn't last long as a commotion draws his attention. A large group of students gathers near the school building, and a girl with a microphone stands at the center of it all. She's identified as the Cruel Princess, well known for rejecting boys in public. This time she targets a boy for being an otaku and having a mole with hair, nicknaming him Molio in front of everyone. The brutal rejection reminds Masamune of his past, triggering a dream during recess about a girl who once called him Pig's Foot. The sting of that just makes him want to pump up more muscle and be more attractive. When Masamune wakes up, the class representative, Futaba, cheerfully tells him it's a good sign that he's comfortable enough to nap in class. During lunch, a boy named Kojuro brings him a sandwich. Masamune accepts it, but internally frets about how many crunches he'll need to do to burn off the carbs. Kojuro, noticing Masamune's perfectionist streak, compares him to the Cruel Princess, Aki Adagaki. Although they're both admired for their looks and skills, their personalities couldn't be more different. Aki then makes an appearance with her assistant, Yoshino. Holding a love letter in hand, she has prepared another man's heart. She was ripped out like a vampire in front of everyone. Tanabe is the lost sheep she's about to use. She mocks him, rips the letter, rips the young man's pride into two, and cruelly nicknames him Pudding Prince. Masamune is blown out of his mind when Kojuro and Futaba reveal that Aki is not only the top student in their year, but also the daughter of a powerful business tycoon. Her name rings a bell, and Masamune realizes he has encountered her much sooner than he expected. The next day, Masamune watches Aki closely and learns that many girls admire her blunt attitude. Curiosity piqued. He asked Kojuro for more details about her. All Kojuro knows is that Aki prefers to eat lunch alone. He wasn't satisfied with that information, so he put on his detective cap. Masamune searches for her around the school and eventually spots Yoshino carrying a food bag to a storage room where Aki waited impatiently. This coward made a noise because of a tiny spider. To his shock, he discovers Aki surrounded by empty food boxes. Apparently she eats like an ogre, and if she doesn't eat enough, her stomach will grumble like a heavy storm. Over the next few days, Masamune tries to befriend Aki, though she remains sharper than a two-edged sword. Rumors start swirling that the Cruel Princess might finally be falling for him. Knowing her true nature, Masamune cleared the air. During PE class, a volleyball hits Masamune's head, and he notices Tanabe glaring at him. Later, Aki sends Yoshino to fetch her more food. In her moment of alone time, Tanabe emerged from the depths of hell with intent to revenge. He took no time in accusing her of being shallow and overly friendly with Masamune. When she calls him Pudding Prince, again, something broke inside of him. He grabs her hair and pulls out scissors to cut it. Masamune intervenes just in time and stops Tanabe and grabs the scissors that injures himself. Tanabe flees with his tail between his legs, and Masamune brushes off his wound, telling Aki she looks cuter when she smiles. This leaves her blushing, though Masamune walks away like a kingpin final boss. At home, Masamune looks at an old photo of himself and Aki from their childhood. Back then, he was overweight and wealthy, while Aki was a sweet girl who often defended him. However, everything changed when he confessed his feelings for her, and she cruelly rejected him, calling him Pig's Foot. Damn! The humiliation was what made my guy bulk up. Now Masamune is determined to get revenge by making Aki fall in love with him and then disgrace her with her own pie. Public humiliation. The following day, Masamune casually explains about his hand injury, claiming he fell, and even greets Tanabe with surprising kindness. Later, he finds an anonymous letter in his locker that said, Pig's Foot. Masamune spends his day feeling paranoid and suspicious of everyone around him. Everything around him was just pointing that his jig might up. He's so lost in thought that he doesn't even notice the teacher calling on him to read in class. Later, while sipping juice, he thinks back to the grueling training his grandfather made him endure to lose weight. It was a man's traumatizing journey to success, but it was worth it. In the school cafeteria, chaos breaks out as students scramble to buy lunch. Yoshino gets pushed to the ground in the crowd. Looking helpless, she asks Masamune to buy 9 sandwiches for Aki. After buying them, Masamune offers to accompany her. Yoshino seems nervous and frightened, which makes him feel bad for her. He imagines her as a modern-day Cinderella, stuck with a demanding stepsister. When they reach the storage room, Aki dives into the sandwiches like a hungry dragon that has been starved for centuries. Yoshino rushes out to grab drinks, leaving Masamune alone with Aki. After having a casual convo, Masamune finds it hard to believe that Aki could be the one who left the ominous letter. When Yoshino returns, she hands him a drink too, which prompts Aki to comment on Yoshino's loyalty. Masamune was about to flare, but he remembered his plan for revenge. He gently touches Aki's cheek and tells her she can lean on him anytime. And like a player my boy is, he smirks like a boss and walks out of there. On his way home, Masamune falls into a trap and ends up dangling from a tree. A hooded figure approaches and calls him Pig's Foot. To his shock, it's Yoshino. If you add that you didn't have to cut me off with those maths calculation stuff, it'd be real nice here. He tried to connect the dots, but then the dots pieced together when he looked at the childhood photo he treasures. He realizes that Yoshino has always been in the background, watching them. That's the height of background character I've ever seen in my entire life. Yoshino explains that her family has served Aki's family for generations. He thought his jig was up, and the plan was going to fail. But then, she surprises him by encouraging him to continue his mission. The next day, Masamune decides not to trust Yoshino fully and sticks to his plan. His next goal is to get Aki's phone number, but it proves harder than he expected. He considers asking Futaba for help, but changes his mind at the last second. Just when he feels stuck, an opportunity presents itself. A school committee member resigns, and Masamune quickly volunteers to fill the spot, knowing Aki is also a member. During cleaning duty, Masamune tries to strike up a conversation with Aki, but she completely ignores him. He focuses on cleaning an empty classroom out of frustration. Suddenly, Futaba walks in, blushing and nervously asking him out on a date. Masamune almost agrees, but stops himself. He's got things to fulfill. To his surprise, Aki overhears the entire exchange and compliments him on his popularity. Masamune seizes the moment and acts like a prince from Egypt, saying he's only interested in dating someone special. Aki takes the bait and playfully asks who that might be. Masamune replies that he wouldn't mind dating her, and she blushed like a 12-year-old in love. Trying to keep the momentum, Masamune asks for her phone number. Aki says her phone is being repaired and promises to give it to him in a week. Masamune spends the next week eagerly waiting, only to find that Aki has left him a note instead. The note sends him on a wild goose chase around the school, following one instruction after another. Finally, he reaches a window where Aki stands outside, holding a large sign. It boldly declares her rejection of him. Masamune realizes he's been outplayed. Yoshino appears, teasing him for being naive. She says he should have just asked her for Aki's number in the first place. To his surprise, Yoshino takes his phone and writes her own number instead. A few days later, Futaba informs the students that extra classes will be mandatory for anyone who fails the upcoming exams. Masamune isn't concerned, but Kojuro admits he's in trouble and might have to attend. Wanting to help, Masamune drags Kojuro to the library to study. There, they run into Aki and Yoshino. It turns out Yoshino is also at risk of failing, which makes Aki tease Masamune's intelligence. Annoyed, Masamune proposes a challenge. If he and Kojuro score better than Aki and Yoshino, Aki will go on a date with him. If they lose, Aki gets to give him a nickname and stick it on his back for an entire year. Aki loves the idea but adds her own twist. If she and Yoshino win, Masamune will have to buy her lunch every day for a whole year. Confident, Masamune agrees, thinking Yoshino will secretly help him. That evening, Yoshino calls to tell him she won't lift a finger for him. Frustrated but determined, Masamune buckles down and makes sure Kojuro studies just as hard. As exam day approaches, both teams put in extra effort. On the morning of the exams, Masamune's mom packs him a low-calorie lunch, knowing the day is important. After finishing the morning exams, Masamune joins Aki for lunch. While buying a drink, he bumps into Yoshino, who hands him a coffee. Masamune apologizes for asking for her help earlier, but Yoshino cryptically says it doesn't matter anymore. Suspicious, Masamune sips the coffee and continues with his day. When the final math test starts, Masamune suddenly feels sharp stomach pain and an urgent need to use the bathroom. Convinced Yoshino spiked his coffee with a laxative, he barely makes it through the test. Afterward, he storms into Aki's classroom to confront her about playing dirty, but a girl informs him that Aki wasn't even at school due to a fever. Masamune's phone buzzes with a message from his sister, who reveals the eggs in his lunch were spoiled. Realizing the stomach trouble wasn't sabotage, Masamune can only groan. Days later, both Masamune and Aki end up in supplementary classes. Aki missed the math test, and Masamune failed because of his bad lunch. Yoshino secretly arranges for the two of them to go on a date, telling Aki that Masamune is so upset about failing that only a date will cheer him up. She also gives Masamune instructions on where to meet. When the date begins, it's clear Yoshino planned everything. She has Aki dress up as a magical girl, claiming it's a traditional outfit for a first date. Their first stop is a rented movie theater, where they watch a bizarre zombie romance film. Both feel awkward but push through. Afterward, they go out to eat. During their meal, Masamune jokingly asks Aki when she started eating so much. She starts to explain. It stems from something in her childhood, but is interrupted by a little girl who asks why Aki is dressed so strangely. Masamune decides to come clean and admits Yoshino lied about him being upset over failing. Aki, mortified by the entire situation, storms off. To make it up to her, Masamune takes her shopping for normal clothes. Aki looks so uncomfortable in the store that Masamune checks on her, only to earn a punch to the face. Later, he wakes up with his head resting on Aki's lap. The moment doesn't last long, as she quickly bolts when she realizes he's awake. That night, Masamune calls Yoshino to confront her. Yoshino, however, reveals she has her own motives. She hints that if Masamune can succeed in humiliating Aki, it would somehow benefit her greatly. Masamune decides to do his research in his favorite romance manga, hoping to find inspiration to make Aki fall for him. The next day, he can't stop staring at her in class. Later, when it starts pouring rain, he notices Aki doesn't have an umbrella. Without hesitation, he gives her his and walks away, leaving her surprised. That night, Masamune meets Yoshino, who advises him to back off. She tells him Aki finds his behavior a bit creepy, and truthfully, I won't lie, the brother's simping. Yoshino suggests he try being cold to her instead. Masamune hesitates but agrees to the plan. The next day, Aki approaches him with his umbrella, wanting to return it. However, Masamune pretends not to hear her and ignores her completely. During supplementary classes, he continues to play the long game of ignoring her. Deep down, it makes him anxious. He worries that he's ruining all the progress he's made with Aki so far. Later, when they meet again with Yoshino around, Masamune keeps his distance. Aki acts like everything is normal, but Yoshino subtly signals him with her eyes to stay away. Masamune remains firm and ignores Aki all day. As the hours pass, Aki grows visibly frustrated and angry. By the afternoon, she corners him, her face flushed, and demands to know why he's avoiding her. To Masamune's shock, the normally composed and fierce Aki is on the verge of tears. Caught off guard, Masamune admits he's been doing it on purpose. Before he can explain, Aki asks him what he likes about her. Stumbling over his words, he panics and bolts. Later, Masamune confides in Yoshino, who is beyond exasperated by his actions. She calls him foolish and insists he needs to figure out what to say to Aki about his feelings. Determined to fix things, Masamune spends the night writing a heartfelt letter for Aki. The next day, he nervously hands it to her, only to watch in disbelief as she tosses it in the trash without even reading it. Feeling defeated, Masamune confronts Yoshino again. This time, she tells him to leave everything to her. However, Masamune refuses, reminding her that this is his revenge plan, not hers. He's adamant about staying involved. Meanwhile, Aki skips class, needing time to think. Her emotions are all over the place, especially after seeing Masamune and Yoshino together the previous day. They seemed close, and it bothers her more than she wants to admit. As Aki sits alone, Yoshino shows up. She explains that her meetings with Masamune are strictly for advice. Yoshino reassures Aki that Masamune only has eyes for her. Even so, Aki's sadness lingers. She remembers the promise she made to herself as a child, to never get hurt by a boy again. She'd vowed to always act first, hurting others before they could hurt her. Frustrated, Aki loudly declares that she doesn't care about Masamune, but Yoshino has already left, leaving her words hanging in the air. Aki begins walking home, lost in thought. Memories of her past and her current feelings for Masamune swirl in her mind. Distracted, Aki steps into the street, not noticing the traffic light is red. A car speeds toward her, and she freezes. In the nick of time, Masamune appears and pulls her out of harm's way. Shaken, he scolds her for being so careless. He tells her she's important to him, his voice filled with emotion. Aki's cheeks turn red, her usual icy demeanor melting for a moment. Before the moment can deepen, a girl suddenly runs toward them. She apologizes profusely and throws her arms around Masamune in a tight hug. Masamune stands there, completely confused, unsure who she is or why she's hugging him.